Hello and welcome to NEOhioLife Spotlight. I'm Myra Rosario. I'm here today with Nataly Mualem with Mualem Law Firm. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
I really appreciate the invite. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So you have started your own journey of having your own law firm and specifically in immigration law. So can you tell us what inspired you to pursue that path?
Absolutely. So I'm an immigrant myself. I came here from Syria when I was 5 years old with my parents and my sibling. She's my sister, who actually, was born here, but we ended up immigrating after. And we've lived in the United States ever since. And I really got to go along with my parents on a very long immigration journey. So it wasn't easy. There were a lot of pitfalls and a lot of things that, went wrong in some instances that could have been prevented with better counsel. So when I went to law school, I didn't intentionally think I was going to be an immigration attorney, but just naturally gravitated towards it because I felt passionate about it and I felt like I had this background and this calling in it. So I started practicing immigration right out of law school, and slowly it developed into business immigration, which is my primary area of practice right now. So I help companies bring workers from overseas, and I think it's a win-win situation.
Did you go right into your own law firm at first, or did you work for another law firm?
No, so I worked for a couple law firms before I went off on my own. I started here in Cleveland, and then we moved to Florida. When we moved to Florida, I ended up doing some remote work, and then I was with a law firm for a couple of years before we came back to Cleveland, kind of considered what to do, and ended up going solo when I came here.
Right. Now, immigration is highly complex,
Yes.
right? It's fast changing, especially now. How do you stay up to date on new policies, regulations, and legal proceedings?
So I think, one of the largest parts of my job is the continued education. So I have to start every day with, reading updates, finding out what new case law is happening. Talking to colleagues also is very helpful. So a lot of times with what my type of immigration, it's not always a court case. It's a decision that's done on an individual case that's, basically an administrative case. So we talk with colleagues a lot to find out how cases went with them, what worked, what didn't work. And the nice thing about immigration and immigration law specifically is I do think we have a nice little community. All the attorneys talk to each other. We're not against each other. It's kind of unlike most other litigation or more different fields where attorneys are against each other. Here, it's like all of us advocating for the clients collectively, and one win for your client ends up being a win for my client down the road. So there's a lot of that, friendliness when we're dealing with each other.
What are some of the biggest challenges you face when navigating a client's immigration process?
Sure. So my specialty is H-2B, and that's a type of temporary work visa. And what we really see is the policy is against what actually benefits the clients. So, we deal with things like a cap shortage. So there's only a limited number of visas available. We deal with things like administrative hurdles. So the biggest challenge I would say is just the way that the policies aren't always, what's the word for this? Like, they're not always created in a way that actually best suits the situation. So we have to work around the policy to maintain what actually works for our client while still, obviously adhering to the laws the way they are.
Yeah, that's very complex. So it's 2025.
Yes.
So, tell us what's currently happening with, the way and the uncertainty and all the changes
Absolutely.
that are happening right now.
Absolutely. So I think uncertainty is the best word for it. We've had to use the word we don't know probably more than we ever have when it comes to clients asking us questions. We really don't know what's going to happen next. Generally, I will say there is more emphasis on immigration compliance. That could look like many different things to many different people. It could mean, an employer having to keep better track of their, data when it comes to like I-9. It could mean an individual having to go through more hurdles to prove their status. And then obviously there's a lot more fear and panic because of that uncertainty and the unequal application of laws depending on where you live in the country, who you interact with, what's happening. But I would say, we have to take a step back and revisit the whole system, see what the flaws are, and then also know our safeguards and know our rights. Because as immigrants, you have rights, and if you're being told otherwise, you're not going to advocate for yourself. So I always say, know your rights, make sure you understand the full system, and know what protections and what safeguards you have that you can actually, use to better improve your situation.
What advice would you give a young lawyer or student that's looking to go into immigration law?
Sure. So I would say be very, very mindful. Always think big picture when it comes to immigration. So the action you take today could have an impact on your client 30 years down the line. So, even though a lot of what we do seems procedural and seems like it's almost transactional, don't let that blindside you of the long-term ramifications of immigration, and always, make sure your headspace is clear when you're analyzing a case, and always, never give up advocating for your clients.
What challenges do you foresee in immigration law over the next few years?
Sure. So obviously with the crackdowns happening, there's going to be a large, large gap in labor. There's going to be families that are displaced from each other. And there's going to be a lot of uncertainty of, the real rights and responsibilities of immigrants. So there's a lot of talk right now about, this group doesn't have this right, or if you don't have status, you don't have the right to do X or Y or Z. So I think that's going to be the biggest challenge, is just how we're going to define the future of our country. And I think the rights that apply to immigrants will be applied later down the line to U.S. citizens as well. So we have to be very careful as a nation in how we craft the safeguards that we have for immigrants, because it really, it could have a very large impact on our economy, on our families, on the future of the country.
Wow. Are there any misconceptions regarding immigration that you'd like to share or address?
Sure. So I think there's quite a bit. One of the most common ones is probably the types of immigration or the types of immigrants. So there's a lot of possibilities of ways to come to the United States, whether it's as investors, as employees, as household, staff, as company workers, and then obviously through family. And I think a lot of times it's, people, they talk about, doing things the right way without realizing all the different pathways and all the different hurdles it takes to actually do things the right way, and how easy it is to slip behind. So a missed deadline, a few days where your package is misplaced, not knowing all the requirements of a visa, all of these things could put somebody that, was on the right path out of status. And it's important to kind of realize how complex the system is and not to oversimplify it.
Wow. Could you share a story of a rewarding experience doing the work you do?
Yes, absolutely. So when you said that, the first thing that comes to mind is when I was practicing at my old firm with H-2Bs, we had a client who called us frantically and said one of their workers, who was a national in Mexico, was here doing work on a farm, and they came down with COVID, and this was before, the vaccine, and everybody was obviously very scared of what that means. And this particular person got very, very sick, and he didn't have anybody here in the United States to care for him. And, as a team, we were able to band together along with the employer, and beating all odds, his mother didn't have a passport. There was a travel ban, related because of COVID. We were able to get his mom humanitarian parole, and she was able to be by his side 2 days later. And just knowing that, this person is not alone in a foreign country with all that, anxiety about what's going to happen to his health was one of the most rewarding experiences.
Yeah, I can see that, just helping them keep their dignity,
Exactly.
that they matter. If you could change one thing about immigration legal process, what would it be and why?
One thing is the hard part. I think I would create more of a process that allowed people, kind of more of, how do I say this? Like maybe more of a process that looked at things in a humanitarian way and forgave minor errors and mistakes, and really kind of looked at the situation more holistically. like if you're here, you're a good person, you haven't hurt anybody, you're following the laws, and there's something kind of a hiccup in your immigration past, but you're here and you have a family member here, or you have an employer here willing to sponsor you. I wish there was a way that you could overcome that burden without so much effort. Generally speaking, it becomes really hard once you have a trip up to go back and be able to process normally after.
Yeah, it's very important not to miss any deadlines or anything
Absolutely.
like that, right? Yeah. As you look forward, where do you see your practice, your career in the next 5 to 10 years?
Sure.
What are some goals to look forward to?
Sure. So I really hope that the practice will be thriving. I, am working relentlessly, as you know, trying to grow my client base and trying to serve the clients in the best way possible. I think the next steps for us are really just perfecting our craft and reaching the most amount of people that we can to help them. One of the things I really hope to do, and hopefully this works out, is to provide fractional in-house services. So I really think being able to step into that role for various companies would be very beneficial and help these companies navigate from the inside out. So I'm not an person on the outside looking in and giving them advice. I'm actually in it with them, and our teams can work together to provide the best possible outcomes for them.
Wow, that's great. Who should contact you as a potential client?
Sure. So any employer that needs an employee, I mostly work in the H-2B arena, which is seasonal work. So landscapers, construction companies, hospitality, restaurants, anybody that has a labor shortage. But I also work with companies that maybe need more highly skilled labor and investors. So a lot of times there's a little bit of a misconception about how big your investment has to be. But there's, for certain countries, that amount can be quite reduced. And then I also help families. So if you have a family member outside of the United States that you'd like to help sponsor, I do that as well.
When you talk about people have rights, what are the rights that they actually have?
Sure. So some of those rights, and I think, kind of thinking about this in a way that maybe more people can relate to, is like if you get stopped for a traffic stop, you don't have to disclose every single, thing to the officer. You don't have to allow them to search your car unless there's probable cause. You don't have to let them come, follow you back home and search your home. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times those rights kind of get blurred when it comes to immigration, but you have those same exact rights. If there's no warrant, you don't have to answer questions. If that warrant is not signed by an immigration judge, you don't have to answer questions. And one of the things we've kind of realized also is a lot of times the officers or the people that you interact with, whether it's at the airport or maybe an officer in some other capacity, they don't always have the correct information as well. So I've had somebody that came to me a few days ago and they were told at the airport that they need to relinquish their green card because they're going to be gone for a long trip, and she didn't know any better, so she did. And, looking back, she had every right to keep her green card. Mm. So, situations like that where I would say for every person, know your situation, know what your status actually is, what it means for you, what consequences you could have, and then know what protections you have, because the level of protection does change, and also know what, where you stand if you are in immigration proceedings.
Should a person reach out to you to kind of know their rights, or how does a person find out where they stand?
Sure. So I don't personally do removal or asylum. Mm-hmm. I'm not an expert on those topics, but what they can do is I do have a general page on my website where you can, read your rights as an immigrant. But whoever represented you for your case is probably the best resource that you have, and they will be able to tell you the ins and outs of where you stand and what that means for your long-term future.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. Can you let us know, or if anyone wants to contact you, how can they contact you?
Sure. The best way is through my website. It's mualemfirm.com. It's MUALEM, firm, FIRM.com. And there's a contact us page, as well as you can also email me at info@mualemfirm.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.